Joining us now is Robert Spencer, the director of Jihad Watch. He's an expert on Islam and jihad. He's led seminars on Islam and jihad for the United States Central Command, the United States Army, the FBI, the U.S. intelligence community. And we're delighted to have him here today. Robert, thank you for joining us today.
The honor's all mine. Thank you, Fred.
Obviously, there are a lot of things that we don't have the answer to about this, and we're all cautioned. The first thing the president did when he finally got around to talking about this subject yesterday was to caution us not to jump to conclusions. But today, I think the American people have got the right to ask some pretty direct questions based on what we do know. And apparently, this character, Hassan, was handing out copies of the Koran yesterday morning and donating his furniture to anyone who would take it. From what you know now, why are these things significant?
Well, they're significant because it's clear he thought he was going to die and that he understood that he would be a martyr according to the Quranic promise of paradise. The Quran, in the whole of the book, never promises paradise, guarantees paradise to anybody except in one place. In chapter 9, verse 111, it guarantees paradise to those who kill and are killed for Allah. And so it's clear that when he's giving away his furniture and giving away Qurans, that he knows that promise, he takes it seriously, and he was acting when he killed all these people on the basis of that understanding.
What else do you think that you can put into context for us in terms of what we know about this person? Apparently, from several sources, he was a devout Muslim. He was against the wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq. He obviously had a good deal of self-interest. I don't know whether he was whether it was philosophical or he was a coward or he just he thought the military was a nice little job to have, but never occurred to him to fight, or what those answers are. Maybe we'll know that later. But he also said that Muslims should be complimented for fighting their aggressors and so forth. All of these are things that this major in the United States Army, who was Muslim, was saying. How does that, is that consistent with what we saw play out yesterday?
It's very much consistent with it. When he says that it's perfectly reasonable for Muslims to rise up against the U.S. military, then it's not a big jump to see that he considered it perfectly reasonable for him to rise up against the U.S. military. This is something where he did not want to fight, as you pointed out, in Iraq or Afghanistan. The Quran says Muslims should not kill other Muslims, but he must have known that going in to the military. He must have known that he might be sent over to Iraq with all the trouble with Saddam Hussein all the way through the 90s and this decade. And so really it strains credulity when people say that he was going to be deployed and this is why he snapped. It seems much more likely that simply that his loyalties were always more to Islam. As a matter of fact, when he was in medical school, before he went to work at Walter Reed Military Hospital, he was actually disciplined for preaching Islam, proselytizing among the students there. And so this is something of long standing. And as you pointed out, he made statements to a coworker that were sympathetic toward suicide attacks, sympathetic toward Muslims waging war against Americans. What's really unnerving, what's really strange and unanswered about this is that how he was able to maintain his position as a major in the U.S. Army when he was so clearly and obviously and manifestly an opponent of the United States.
Well, that's one of the big answers that the American people have a right to have. I don't mind telling you what occurs to me, and that is political correctness and the pressures that are on the military now to make sure that they check all of the appropriate boxes and never get accused of anything untoward. Do you think that could have played a part in this?
Oh, very much so, because, look, I can just imagine the headlines. If it had come out that he had been removed from his position and that he had been removed from his position because of statements he had made sympathetic to suicide bombing and so on, then there would be, the Council on American Islamic Relations would have been all over it. There would have been a lawsuit. There would have been charges of bigotry, of racism, of Islamophobia, of discrimination, hatred against Muslims. And, you know, this is the climate of political correctness that prevails today, and it's likely that his superiors and those who knew about his positions, they just didn't want to pay this price. They didn't want to take that risk.
What should Americans know about jihad and Islam, the relationship between the two? Obviously, there are a lot of people who are followers of Islam who do not fall in that category, who are good citizens and all of that. But apparently, some are very highly educated people, very intelligent people, very calm people, very good neighbors, and so forth. But apparently, are just this close to mass murder. Under the right circumstances. What is it that Americans should know, and how do we make a distinction?
What it is the unpleasant fact, but it is a demonstrable fact, is that the Quran teaches that Muslims should wage war against unbelievers and subjugate them under the rule of Islamic law. All the schools of Islamic law teach that. Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, teaches that. And so it's what's more surprising is that you find professing, believing Muslims who are well informed about their faith and intent on putting it into practice who are not interested in that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so certainly there's a diversity in the Islamic community in terms of their response to this, but that's because there's a diversity in every religious tradition. There's some people who take it very seriously and do everything that the book says, and then some people who identify themselves by the name of the group, but they don't necessarily know, or if they do know, they don't necessarily care about what it teaches. So we can be grateful that there are many Muslims who do not follow the jihad ideology and do not put it into practice. We can be glad that that is the case, but it does not mean that these teachings don't exist. And unfortunately, the Islamic jihadists are able to point to chapter and verse to justify what they do.
I understand what you're saying. It's a very troubling situation. Robert Spencer, director of Jihad Watch, thank you for being with us.